Where does Dogman actually come from? Welcome to Scary Stories. Lately we've been getting some angry comments from a couple or three people insisting we focus on telling true accounts and to stop calling our stories, even though the word stories is literally our channel's middle name. I don't know if those few people are a loud but small minority, or if they actually represent the feelings of a lot of you. So that's sort of why I'm doing this episode about historical Dogman accounts and my analysis or interpretations thereof. If this gets a lot of views, I'll do more stuff like it. Now, although every story or narrative I'm going to present is something I got from the historical record, we have to keep in mind what the historical record is. For the most part, we're talking about newspaper and magazine articles written by one person and possibly altered or edited by an editor or publisher. It's not exactly a video recording of events. It's very subjective just by the nature of it. And then when you look at stories from the yellow journalism eras, which would be the late 1800s through early 1900s, and of course 2016 through the present, then you have to be even more skeptical than normal of what you read. During those eras, you'll find the motivations of profit and clout far outweighing the urge to inform the public, and so basically anything goes. Similarly, stories from the past are often harder to follow up on, so we are often fooling ourselves to even think that we have anything more than legend and lore. When I was 11 or 12, my Uncle Carl gave me some of his paperback books about the weird. I read my first Frank Edwards book thanks to Uncle Carl, and he was the one who introduced me to the work of John A. Keel, one of the most important researchers of the 20th century. Keel was relatively unique in that even though he viewed himself as a journalist, he rarely asked his readers to believe the stories he told. He encouraged them to be skeptical instead. I learned the word agnostic from reading Keel's books, and it has remained one of the most important words in my life. You don't have to believe everything you're told, nor do you have to disbelieve. Most things are not black or white, they're gray. They fall somewhere on the spectrum between yes and no. This is what Robert Anton Wilson was writing about in the Schrodinger's Cat trilogy. Is the cat alive or dead? Until we lift the box and look, the cat is both alive and dead according to Schrodinger. The cat exists in the maybe, in the gray zone between real and unreal. When we're looking into monsters and UFOs and whatnot, we are in that gray middle zone of not knowing what's real or not, at least until we're able to lift that box and look underneath. Right now, all we know is that people claim to have seen Dogman, figuratively speaking, under that box. And until or unless we can metaphorically lift that box, literally capture a Dogman and analyze it, we are in the gray middle zone, where Dogman is both real and not real, is both a true living creature and a fabricated myth, or Jungian archetype, or perhaps a tulpa. I got to know and be friends with John Keel when I was in my 20s and 30s. He was an incredibly sincere guy, as sincere as Kurt Cobain. And he was an artist, too. He wanted me to make an art film that would also be a documentary about his life. He ended up getting one of the Kuchar brothers to make the film instead. It is very unique, and it tells you a lot about Keel because he saw himself as an artist and a magician, at least as much as he saw himself as a journalist of the bizarre. One time a few years ago, I was a guest on my late friend Timothy Green Beckley's radio show, along with Seth Breedlove of Small Town Monsters, which is also on YouTube. During commercial breaks, Tim and I were sharing our John Keel stories. Tim talked about the time that he and Keel went to see Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which they both thought explained the phenomena better than many serious attempts to take on the subject. Keel was one of the first to notice the strong trickster element behind the UFO and monster phenomena. As I grew up a fan of him, he grew up a fan of Charles Fort. Keel and Beckley headed up the New York Fortean Society. That was how Keel pronounced it, Fortean, not Fortean. Keel would call me up on the phone and make me watch stage magic shows on TV along with him. He would tell me how the tricks were done, and then tell me rude stories about the magicians in the show. who he of course knew from their secret magic club that those guys have. Like, not all celebrities know each other, but every magician knows every other magician. So, after explaining to me how the tricks were done, he would ask me if I could have figured it out. I couldn't even figure it out after he told me how it was done. So Keel's point was, if we are so easy as a species to fool that we can't even figure out how stage magic is performed when we know for certain that it is a trick, then how can we be so sure what we're actually looking at when we look out and see Dogman or UFOs or lake monsters or, TV anchor people? Who is to say if any of those things are real? And how do we define the word real in the first place? See, that's been my worldview since I was around 12, thanks to my late friend and mentor, John Keel. And this is why I never quite know how to answer when people ask me if my stories are real or not. I know they mean true, as all stories are real stories, whether true or not. But I don't know how to honestly answer that question either. I'd rather try to expand the worldview of the viewer than contract my worldview just to get more popular. This is likely one of the reasons my channel seems to have such a stunted growth pattern. I'm not handing out ice cream cones. I'm giving you instructions how to make the ice cream yourself, and there's always going to be less demand for that. So now let's go through some famous Dogman accounts, stories which are generally accepted to be more or less true. Then let's ask ourselves if the Dogman in that sighting was a real living creature like a bear, or if it might have been something crossed over from someplace else. Now, there's a Dogman encounter report from 1936 that allegedly happened in Racine, Wisconsin. I had never heard about this one until fairly recently, when the History Channel dug the story out of mothballs. I'm betting they got the idea from some author. If you know who rediscovered that case, please tell the rest of us in the comments. So this was the St. Coletta's Church story that we discussed on a previous episode, but don't ask me which one. Allegedly, there was a night watchman back there in 1936 named Mark Shackleman. He alleged that one night on his job, he witnessed what looked like a werewolf digging at an old Indian burial mound. When the creature noticed Shackleman, it ran away. The next night, Shackleman again discovered the creature in the same place doing the same thing, but this time it did not run away. Instead, it stood up bravely, and Shackleman realized that it stood 6 feet tall on its hind legs. Then it made a vocalization, which Shackleman did not interpret as an animal sound, but instead as a word. The word, he reported, was Gadara. I find it interesting that the night watchman assumed he was dealing with an intelligent humanoid who could communicate using spoken language. Seems like a lot of assumptions to make, unless he had a reason to think the creature possessed a human or greater intelligence. Was the mere fact that it stood like a man enough to cause Shackleman to assume he was dealing with a higher life form? Or was it somehow in some other way that remained unrecorded in the newspaper report, in which the Dogman caused the man to understand that he was intelligent? What if Shackleman was correct? What if Dogman is a kind of man? I mean, a kind of intelligent creature like humanity. If so, why are we not officially aware of these dog-headed people? And I know some of you will bring up cynocephaly, so let's deal with that next. Since I can, as far as I know, travel back in time to investigate any of this personally, all we can do is look back at what scant writings and images we've had passed down to us. Yes, there are drawings of dog-headed people from the Middle Ages, but those are not photographs. So, when skeptics assert that the illustrations were done incorrectly, we do have to consider their arguments. For instance, St. Christopher was a Canaanite. He was from the land of Canaan. The Latin root of Canaanite and canine, or canid, is the same. And so the mainstream historical view is that people from Canaan were often depicted by those who had never personally visited the Middle East as dog-headed people. Of course, you can make the argument that Canaan was called Canaan because the people there were dog-headed, but that's going to be a tough one to prove. Not one dog-headed human skeleton has been authenticated yet. And of course, some of you will argue that it's because they're being suppressed and hidden. Maybe that's true. But until Jim Vieira and Hugh Newman come up with old photos of dog-headed human skeletons, I'm going to have to come down on the side of doubting the drawings of St. Christopher being an actual dogman. There's another story from the 30s, this one from 1938 in Michigan, next state to the east of Wisconsin. It's supposed to have occurred on the Muskegon River near Paris, Michigan. On this map, it looks like the Muskegon runs right through Paris, with Hoover Road cutting across, like a bridge, right over it. I think this happened a bit outside of, but still within walking distance of the town. I'm not sure of the original source of this report, but the internet tells us that a 17-year-old guy named Robert Fortney was fishing the Muskegon when he was randomly and suddenly attacked by a pack of dogs. He fired a warning shot into the air and the dogs all scattered, save for one. It was the largest of them all, and it had blue eyes. That oversized canine regarded Fortney with no fear at all in his expression. Then he bared his formidable teeth into a sick, mocking grin. Terrified, Fortney fired another warning shot, closer to the huge blue-eyed, black-furred monstrosity. It did not run away in fear, though, not even then. Instead, the dog stood up on its hind legs, standing at least 6 feet from toes to ears, and continued to dare to look the armed human right in his eye. Then, standing like a man as if to show Fortney that he wasn't the only one who knew how to walk upright, the big dogman casually trotted away to find less cranky game to bring down. Now this story presents us with an earthier kind of a dogman. He hunts with a pack. It's a pack, however, that he couldn't possibly actually belong to biologically. He must have adopted them, or they must have adopted him, or they must have all adopted each other. Where was he from originally, though? Was he just an extremely large wolf or dog who taught himself to walk upright? If we humans have geniuses and star athletes, might not wolves and other canines merely have occasional very large or very smart outliers in their societies? Could that not only explain Dogman, but also explain his obvious rarity? Could Dogman be not an individual species, but instead mutant individuals, born perhaps 5 to 10 max in each generation? Some might run with packs like in this story, but many others might be rejected from packs because of their differences and operate as lone wolves in a literal sense. Has anyone run that idea past someone who understands canine genetics? I wonder if I'm making any sense or if I'm just speaking gobbledygook. At any rate, I would say this story appears to be more likely about a real animal than a supernatural one from another dimension or reality. So this case appears to argue against my thesis that Dogman may be some species or even a variety of species walking in from another reality next to or concurrent with our own. Okay, the next famous historical account that the internet likes to talk about is the 1961 Big Rapids, Michigan case. Look how close this is to the last case from 23 or 24 years earlier. Just a 9-minute drive or a 2-hour walk between the two locations. Now, first of all, this is that rare Dogman story that comes with an actual photo. That's the good news. The bad news is that every copy I can find of that photo seems to be tiny, so I'll do what I can to show it to you. See, here's the streetlight, and behind it appears to be the same Dogman that's in so many of our thumbnails. Looks just like him to me, except that's not a 3D model like what I use to make those thumbnails. That's an actual black and white photograph from 1961, before I was born, long before 3D computer animation and graphics were a thing. If it's fake, then I think it's faked in the camera. It would have to be a life-size model or person in a costume or something of that nature, due to when it was taken. So what's the story behind this historical Dogman? Big Rapids was the town, and it was the eastern edge of town that the incident took place on. See all that green to the east, which is the right on your screen? That's all the Haymarsh State Game Land over there. It's a huge hunting ground not only for human beings, but also any other kind of big game predator, that happens to be migrating through the area. So let's zoom in on the edge of town there and see if we can find any manufacturing plants. What's this here? It says it's a manufacturer. This might be where the incident took place. Then again, this factory might have been built years later for all I know. Since we don't have an address to work with, let's use this as a model to demonstrate the story, as this might actually be the real location. So the guy was supposed to live across from the manufacturing plant. Maybe he was over here or here. Maybe he was here where this real estate office is, or over here. The story begins around 3 a.m. when he saw something creepy walking around outside. The guy assumed he was an intruder. So, seeing that 1961 was a very different time from now, he went to his home across the street and grabbed himself his rifle. Returning outside, he saw not a human intruder, but what we would now call an upright walking canine, or the Michigan Dogman. It was standing right in his driveway, waiting for him to take a shot at it. Suddenly, the gun-toting security guard turned into a modern progressive moralist. Instead of bagging the most dangerous game of all, he ran back inside to get his camera and take a picture of it instead. Apparently, he decided a photo of it would be worth more Twitter No, wait, this is 1961. Anyway, the anonymous guy snapped his picture, and we've already been showing you what he captured. Remember, this was 1961, and nobody making monsters for movies was able to build a costume where it realistically looked like a human had canine legs. This creature does appear to have canine legs, and yet he was walking upright. Could it just be a lucky shot? A trick of light and shadow? Or did that security guard grab the 1960s first and only known real photo of a werewolf or dogman? I suppose that's for you to decide. This case also seems to argue for the dogman being a real flesh and blood creature. The sighting happened near a large natural area known to be packed with game. I'm sure they see bear and other forest animals from time to time straying into that town. The dogman in this account didn't do anything to cause himself to seem anything but natural. So where's my evidence to support my assertion that there might be something more to this than meets the eye? Let's turn to that British guy from Texas, TV's famous Nick Redfern. He co-wrote a book with Tim Beckley, Brad Steiger, and others about dogman and werewolves, which Tim named Cryptid Creatures from Dark Domains. Redfern's also written multiple columns about Dogman for Mysterious Universe. In his August 19th, 2021 column entitled Mystery of the Dogman, Not Normal Animals at All, which hopefully I've remembered to link in the description, Redfern asserts that Linda Godfrey's own research can be used to present the case that Dogman may be supernatural or paranormal. Redfern thinks there's enough information out there to come to the conclusion that the Dogman is not an ordinary predator. Redfern informs us that Linda Godfrey claims she was contacted by a military whistleblower in 2005. This alleged whistleblower claimed that Dogman is an alien species related to the ancient Egyptian deity Anubis. I wonder if that was actually a government agent, or if it was possibly a publicity person for the Stargate TV series. It's hard to believe alleged whistleblowers, at least for me. They're just as likely, or maybe more likely, to be disinformation agents. The thing about disinformation, though, is that typically a lot of truth is included in the disinfo, truth that's being hidden in plain sight. So the question becomes, if Linda Godfrey's informant was lying to cover something up, what were they trying to avert our eyes from? Redfern also references Godfrey's 2016 book Monsters Among Us, in which she makes a claim that Dogman often walks inside a strange mist that prevents witnesses from taking photos of him. Allegedly, strange lights are seen in conjunction to some Dogman sightings as well, although no specific cases are mentioned in this column. It sounds like a description of a demonic force rising from hell in an old-time scary movie, doesn't it? I've never heard of a bear walking through a magical mist with glowing eyes. I don't live in the woods, though, so maybe that's a thing, too. I can keep looking into this and looking for other old stories and Dogman reports if you'd like. We can keep this an open discussion. Is the Dogman natural? Is the Dogman paranormal or extra-dimensional? Is the Dogman a bunch of hooey and hoaxing? Do you guys have any interest in me continuing pulling up old stories like this? And one by one, together we can categorize them. Natural, supernatural, hoax, undecided, or whatever other category we think they belong in. If you'd like to see more of this, please give it a like. Subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. And if you know anyone else you think might be interested in this kind of a thing, please send them a link to check it out as well. Doing all these different things tells YouTube that it's okay to let more people have a chance to look at this video. And on the other hand, if you'd like me to discontinue this direction, feel free to let me know what you'd rather see me do, and maybe I'll consider doing that instead. In either case, your old pal Bigfoot is telling me it's time to thank today's executive producer, so take it away, Biggie. We don't thank this person as much as we ought. I'm talking about Lost in Thought. Please join me in thanking today's executive producer, the grand and glorious Lost in Thought. Hooray! LIT gets all our perks, including our over 25 hours of secret, uncensored Dogman stories far too wild to ever tell on this channel. Plus, Lost in Thought gets one new secret, uncensored story per week, and advanced previews of episodes whenever possible. And you can be as cool as Lost in Thought. How? Well, here comes international TV spokesmongrel Henry Lee Dogman to explain all the deets. Hank. Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it with your friends and family that you think might also be interested. If you would like to see more of our work, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will alert you when we put out a new video. To become a channel member and gain access to our special perks, you can click that join link under each of our videos. Another option is to join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You can join for as little as 99 cents on YouTube or $1.50 at peterbernard.com, and that gains you access to our weekly secret uncensored episodes. If you'd like to see our 21 hours of archives of uncensored Dogman stories, then please join at the $3 level or above. To get to watch our shows in advance of the public, please join at our $10 level. That gets you all the perks. If you join our channel memberships, you need to check our community page here on YouTube in order to get the links to the secret videos and other perks. If you're in the PayPal subscribers club, Peter will email you all the news and links himself. Once joining the PayPal club, which is Peter's homemade club, please give him a chance to see that you've joined and to compose you a personal welcome email, as none of that is automated. But whichever you join, we'll name you an executive producer for the next available episode. Do you have a scary experience that you'd like to share with us? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LA-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. It's a Google voicemail box, so that means it keeps cutting off after every 3 minutes. If your story is longer than that, please keep calling back and we can piece it together on our end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.
April showers, Dogman flowers. It doesn't matter what your local weatherman says, because the week of April 25th through 30th is the downpour of Dogman, the week of wet werewolves, and the hound hurricane. Why do atmospheric disturbances seem to happen so often during Dogman and other high strangeness cryptid experiences? We will be examining alleged sightings and encounters with werewolf-type entities sent in to us by you viewers yourselves, where lightning and thunder or else severe snow and hail seem to appear out of nowhere, either just prior to, during, or immediately following extremely terrifying run-ins with glowing-eyed, often upright walking canines. That's different, all new Dogman stories, each day from Monday through Saturday, right here on the Scary Stories channel. It never rains, but it pours. Dogman.